Welcome back to Pressers by FedNet. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries held a news conference on June 29th as the House looked ahead to advancing the fiscal year 2027 defense bill. Jeffries discussed mail-in ballots, the Iran war, and a birthright citizenship case still pending before the Supreme Court. The following material is protected by copyright.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
1 year ago, Republicans enacted the One Big Ugly Bill, which was the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, resulting in millions of people on the brink of losing their health care coverage. They ripped nutritional assistance away from hungry children, seniors, and veterans. And all of this was done to reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks, and in the process, skyrocketing both the deficit and the debt. In the Republican One Big Ugly Bill, which gutted Medicaid and enacted the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history, $186 billion, they also provided tens of billions of dollars in a slush fund to unleash ICE brutality on law-abiding immigrant families and to brutalize and kill American citizens, including Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good. Yet Republicans have decided that they're going to spend this week celebrating themselves and patting themselves on the back for gutting Medicaid and nutritional assistance in order to unleash ICE brutality on the American people and give their billionaire donors massive tax breaks that they don't need and do not deserve. It's extraordinary to us, but it's entirely consistent with the approach that Donald Trump has undertaken, which is to make clear to the American people that the Republican worldview is that the affordability crisis is a hoax. They love inflation, and Republicans don't give a damn about the personal financial situation of the American people. So the stakes are very high for everyday Americans, and the path in front of us is very clear. Republicans have failed to drive down the high cost of living. In fact, costs haven't gone up in the United States of America. Costs have not gone down. They've gone up in the United States of America. And life has gotten worse for everyday Americans, working class Americans, and law-abiding, hard-working American families. So House Democrats are going to continue to stay the course and work on the issues that we believe matter to the American people, like driving down the high cost of living, fixing our broken healthcare system, and cleaning up corruption. Questions?
Mr. Leader, good afternoon. Thank you. With the election, the prospective election of some of these Democratic socialists in your home city here, how do Democrats in swing districts, battleground districts, how do they inoculate themselves? How do they run compared to some of these messages that those folks on the left are going to run on?
Over the last 18 months, Democrats across the country have won every single meaningful election against Republicans in places like Texas, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, along with, of course, Virginia and New Jersey. We've won races up and down the ballot at all points in between across the country because Democrats are continuing to focus on the issues that matter, like fixing our broken healthcare system, lowering the high cost of living for everyday Americans, because this economy is suffocating people. They are drowning in the Trump economy, can't thrive, and can barely survive. And so as long as Democrats in the House, both our extraordinary frontline incumbents as well as our red to blue candidates, continue to focus on the local issues that matter, anchored around the economy, the cost of living, and combating Trump Republican inflation, I remain confident, as we've done over the last 18 months, that Democrats will continue to win elections.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Yep, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Just to piggyback on that, though, can you set expectations for tomorrow's races in Colorado, particularly CD1 with Diana DeGette? Do you believe she's capable of winning, and what does it say that her race is very close in terms of, this challenge against incumbents by Democratic Socialists?
It's a close race, and we'll see what happens. Ultimately, it'll be in the hands of the people of Denver, but the reality is we have an unsettled electoral environment, which is going to be the case when Donald Trump is president. And he's out of control. The country, under his leadership, is falling apart as it relates to the economy and his extreme assault on the American way of life. And in an environment like that, there are going to be active primary races. In fact, we know that pretty much every cycle, there are active primaries, and a handful of incumbents actually are unable to retain their seats. And I think it's not a surprise that there are highly competitive primaries in deep blue parts of the country that are also unfolding this cycle. And so I think it'll be close, tomorrow to be in the hands of the voters. I think that Representative DeGette has had an extraordinary career in the United States House of Representatives, and she's forcefully making her case.
Yeah, if you would, two questions on Supreme Court. One, if you could respond specifically to the decision on mail-in ballots, and then two, it was sort of a mixed bag of decisions, depending upon who you are and what you believe in. Does that give you more confidence in the court that it was a mixed bag as we anticipate more decisions coming? So two questions.
Well, in the narrowly concluded 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court did the right thing with respect to preserving each state's ability, consistent with the United States Constitution, to manage the electoral process relative to voting by mail. Voting by mail has never been a partisan issue until Donald Trump decided to peddle conspiracy theories related to his own failures to win back in 2020. And it's clear to me that because Donald Trump has been such a failure relative to his presidency, Donald Trump promised to lower costs on day one. Costs haven't gone down. Costs have gone up. Because of Trump policies like the tariffs that have increased costs on everyday Americans by thousands of dollars per year. Donald Trump promised to love and cherish Medicaid, and then as a result of the one big ugly bill, enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Donald Trump promised that he wasn't in office to start wars, he was in office to stop them. And then he turned around and got the country involved in a reckless and costly war of choice in Iran, which has increased gas prices on everyday Americans in ways that are causing real financial pain. He has zero track record of success, which is why Donald Trump has decided that they're going to try to cheat to win. And the Supreme Court dealt a big blow to Donald Trump's scheme to rig the midterm elections.
And then
Mr.
the
Leader.
part two on just the general sense of the Supreme Court and whether the mixed bag gives you any feeling that it's fair.
I believe that we need dramatic Supreme Court reform in terms of moving forward, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. At the same period of time, we'll evaluate Supreme Court decisions on a case-by-case basis, and hopefully we'll see the Supreme Court actually do the right thing and follow the Constitution in the next day or so and uphold birthright citizenship.
Mr. Leader, are you satisfied in the frequency in which the Trump administration is holding briefings in regards to Iran? As we know, Secretary Rubio is set to brief members at 4 p.m. Are you satisfied with the frequency and also the subject matter whenever they brief you?
We need an all-hands-on-deck classified briefing for the entirety of the House of Representatives and the entirety of the Senate. This is an incredibly significant matter related to Iran of war and peace. And the administration is taking a step in the right direction by holding the unclassified briefing today. But clearly, this matter, which has adversely impacted the national security interests of the American people and put Iran in a stronger position relative to the United States than they were in prior to the start of Donald Trump's reckless and costly war of choice in the Middle East, requires a full classified briefing for the entire House of Representatives. It's my hope that that will happen sooner rather than later.
Mr. Leader, kind of keeping in the topic of the Middle East, I know that there's been some discussions within the Dem caucus about aid to Israel, and I just kind of want to ask more broadly. I know we're dealing with this Massey amendment that may be coming up for a vote this week on stripping out of the State Department funding bill aid to Israel. Where do you stand, and where do you believe the Democratic Party stands in terms of supporting Israel, one of the key allies to the United States in the Middle East?
Well, with respect to the State and Foreign Operations bill that may or may not be on the floor later on this week, we'll have a in-person discussion before the House Democratic Caucus tomorrow, continuing the discussion that began yesterday virtually under the leadership of Rosa DeLauro, and then we'll have more to say about this particular bill and any amendments connected to it shortly thereafter. With respect to sort of the situation in the Middle East, my position has and remains the same. One, the United States should continue to support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state. At the same period of time, we should strongly push for a Palestinian state that can live side by side in peace and prosperity with the state of Israel, and bring about the legitimate aspirations for self-determination and dignity for the Palestinian people. We need to find a robust pathway toward a just and lasting peace, because what we've seen over the last several years cannot ever happen again. And United States policy has consistently, through different administrations until this one, been to try and actually achieve a safe and secure Israel and an independent Palestinian state, side by side, as part of our commitment to find and obtain a just and lasting peace in the Middle East.
A question on the other Supreme Court ruling related to independent agencies. What will this mean that Trump can now fire the heads of FTC and others as far as the ability to regulate bad business practices, pollution, and other issues that affect the public?
Yeah, the Supreme Court did the right thing with respect to the Federal Reserve Board and preserving the independence of that institution and making clear that Donald Trump does not have the ability to fire Lisa Cook, which was done by Bill Pulte, or inspired certainly by his egregious actions, which is why the notion that Bill Pulte should serve as the acting Director of National Intelligence is so out of bounds and out of control. And it's the reason why we've got challenges with respect to the reauthorization of surveillance authority. At the same period of time, the Constitution is pretty clear in creating a structure in this country of a separate and co-equal branch of government, the Congress, the executive branch, and the judiciary. And the executive branch is not all-powerful, and the framers were intentional about ensuring we didn't have a king-like figure serving as the President of the United States of America. And unfortunately, what we've seen from this Supreme Court, beginning with the Trump v. United States decision that gave Donald Trump blanket immunity to engage in the smash and grab, illegal, corrupt activity regularly coming out of the White House, is entirely inconsistent with the framework that we believe those who constructed the Constitution in this country thought was appropriate. And so the decision by the Supreme Court to give this person, Donald Trump, more power to continue to destroy America from within as a result of the extreme policies that Donald Trump continues to unleash on the American people is unfortunate.
Just to follow up on the earlier question, what is your personal position on the Massey Amendment?
I'll articulate my personal position in the aftermath of the caucus meeting tomorrow morning.
Mr. Leader, thank you. Two questions. One quick. Have you spoken yet to Daralisa Avila Chevalier? Still doesn't roll off the tongue yet. And Claire Valdez, I know you had mentioned that you had already spoken to Brad Lambert.
Claire and I have communicated. I have not spoken to Daralisa yet.
And second question, if I may. Obviously, there are many state delegations, but probably New York is one of the closest ones, and you definitely rely on so many of your colleagues. They themselves are leaders in their own rights, ranking members, and even in other more cultural coalitions, let's say. This is obviously a different ideological group that is coming in. I mean, how are you all as a delegation preparing for these newcomers, regardless of what happens, whether after the midterms, these are going to be your colleagues? How are those conversations going, and how are you planning on welcoming them in and teaching them about the ways of Congress?
Well, I think everyone's focused right now on actually making sure Kate Conley is elected, making sure that Tom Suozzi, as well as Josh and Laura, are reelected, and then doing what we can to help Rebecca Bennett over in New Jersey 7 defeat Tom Kaine, and taking back control of the House of Representatives, because at the end of the day, our ability to actually enact positive change for the people that we represent in New York City and in New York State is directly tied to our ability to take back control of the House, push back the extremism, begin the process of ending this national nightmare in America, and trying to continue our country's march toward a more perfect union in our 250th year. That's what everybody's been focused on. Now, the New York delegation has been very close-knit during the entire time that I've been here, and it's been an honor for me to serve with legends like Charlie Rangel, Nydia Velasquez, Jerry Nadler, and so many others, Nita Lowy, may her memory continue to be a blessing, and so many others, and I'm looking forward to being able to maintain that cohesiveness as a New York delegation. We expect that it'll be a total of 20 or 21 of us. There are 19 right now. Those numbers are going to grow in November, and the New York delegation will continue to be a force for good for the people of New York. Thanks.
There seems to be growing concern within the New York delegation that your endorsement doesn't hold the weight that it once did, that the mayors may perhaps carry more. Do you feel that's fair?
Who in the New York delegation has articulated that, since you're referencing growing concern?
So just as I would not.
So you don't have a name?
Well, I'm going to extend them the same courtesy that I would everybody else, but this question is about you.
Yeah. Well, you asked me a question making reference to particular members, but then you didn't cite a member.
Right, because they're conversations on background, but what is your response to that?
I don't have a response to that, actually, because I think that it's, something that has not come up in any of the conversations that we've had. Every single member of Congress has a responsibility, of course, to try to do the best that they can to make their case to voters. And I'm going to continue to support every single Democratic incumbent in the New York congressional delegation and beyond. And I'm proud of having done that with respect to Adriano Espaillat, who I've known for 20 years, and Dan Goldman, who I've served with for the last 4.
Sticking with New York, obviously we're waiting to see what's going to happen with the housing bill that was passed last week, but the mayor's rent freeze went through last week, it was approved last week. I'm wondering if you told me last week that addressing the housing crisis is an all-hands-on deck effort. Do you think that the mayor's hiring freeze in your city is something that will also help to address this crisis that you say is so acute in New York City?
Well, I think that one, hopefully, now that Donald Trump has concluded his temper tantrum, it appears, although based on today's Supreme Court decision, unclear, what actually is going to happen now in the next few days with respect to the bipartisan housing bill that was led by Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren to try to actually create a situation in this country where we can build housing that the American people can afford. So that housing bill is a step in the right direction, but much more needs to be done. And in my conversations with the mayor, including most recently, we both believe that this housing bill is helpful in terms of unlocking the ability for more affordable housing to be built in the city of New York and beyond. But clearly, a lot more needs to be done in order to solve the affordability crisis in housing and in other areas like healthcare, gas, goods, groceries, utilities that have been crushing the American people.
What are your thoughts on the rent freeze in particular?
Well, listen, I've been a champion of rent-regulated housing since my time in the state legislature. The mayor has the prerogative to do it. I think that, listen, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to regulate our way out of this issue that we confront. It'll provide relief temporarily to people who are suffocating with high rents in New York City. That's a positive step in the right direction. If we're going to actually more permanently solve the issue, I think we all recognize we got to build more housing.
Thank you.
On birthright citizenship, can you talk a little bit about what the implications and downstream effects would be for this pending decision and what the importance of having that in the Constitution is, both for immigrants, children of immigrants, but also for people who say my family has been here for generations?
Well, there's no circumstances where this Supreme Court, applying the law and being guided by the Constitution, should do anything other than affirm the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which goes all the way back to Reconstruction and the efforts to ensure that newly freed, enslaved Africans wouldn't have their citizenship questioned on the basis of their race. And from that moment forward, there's been no doubt about the constitutionality and ironclad nature of the birthright citizenship clause to the United States Constitution, and that should be affirmed. Thank you, everyone.
This program is provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without express written permission from FedNet is prohibited. Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast.